How is your organization managing controls for Amazon S3 today? If you're like most organizations, the answer to these questions are complicated. Does a central IT team manage it? Does data engineering manage it? How do your users who need access to this data get timely access to it? To control access to Amazon S3, organizations previously had to rely on IAM policy creation. As your data lake scales, you can run into policy size limitations. Amazon's introduction of AWS IAM Identity Center and Amazon S3 Access Grants aims to change this. S3 Access Grants allow organizations to scale fine-grained access to S3. Additionally, S3 Access Grants simplify S3 access with an intuitive way to give access based on grants. In today's demo, I will show how Immuta can dynamically control access to S3 data using S3 Access Grants. Immuta's new S3 integration utilizes S3 Access Grants to allow you to define plain language policies that directly control access to S3 objects based on identity system user attributes. We will use these policies and attributes to control who can access S3 data in a bucket via SageMaker. To start, we'll look at a sample bucket in Amazon S3. In this bucket, you can see a few subfolders. There are 3 folders: Finance, Medical, and HR. Next, we'll look at AWS's S3 Access Grant page. Here you can see the Access Grants instance has already been created by Immuta. If we select View Details, you will see that no grants have been created yet. Let's log into Immuta and define a policy to control access to this bucket. This is the Immuta UI. You can see that our S3 bucket has been registered with Immuta. Now that Immuta knows the bucket and prefixes, we start by tagging the S3 data. We will tag the Finance subfolder as Company Hierarchy Finance. Tagging this data allows us to map user attributes to the underlying S3 objects. Additionally, Immuta allows you to push tags from external systems like Amazon Macy for classification. Now that we've set a tag on this S3 folder, we can start defining rules that control who can access this data based on user attributes from the identity system. This attribute-based access control will allow us to grant access to finance users in a scalable, easy-to-understand way. To get started, we will build a subscription policy in Immuta. In Immuta's policy editor, we will define the action we want to take. In this case, we will specify that we want any user who's a member of the finance group to be able to access any data in S3 that has a finance tag associated with it. Before enabling this policy, let's look at the current grants on the S3 Access Grants page in the S3 console. Notice how no grants are listed for the bucket we are currently looking at. After enabling the Immuta subscription policy, you'll notice that a user has been granted access to the bucket. That is because this user was a member of the finance group, so they are now automatically granted access to the files within the finance folder in S3. Next, we will access the data in this bucket from a SageMaker notebook. To access data that S3 Access Grants controls, we first need to request temporary credentials from the Access Grants service. To do this, we simply provide user information from the AWS command line to the Python library we are using to request temporary credentials. Note that our request will be denied if we try to access this bucket without getting the temporary credentials first. Now that we have temporary credentials, we can call the S3 List Objects API to give us the list of files in the Finance folder in our S3 bucket. In this bucket, some data contains transaction-level information. This data has been partitioned by country code, so each file only contains data with transaction details of its respective countries. If my user tries to open one of these files, they can now see the data because their user is a member of the finance group in the identity system. In this demo, you saw how Immuta builds access policies for S3 by using S3 Access Grants. These policies utilize user details from the identity system, providing more dynamic controls for who can access S3 data and why. To get started with Immuta, follow the links in the description for more information.